Krishna Jackson here with Sam Sklar, Mississippi State expert, covers the beat for the Clarion Ledger. Sam, ready to talk some Bulldogs today?
Yeah, let's get to it. It's almost football or almost basketball season. It is football season right now, but college basketball season always sometimes sneaks up on some people. So I'm ready to talk some hoops.
So since Chris Jans came to town, 3 straight 21 seasons, 3 straight tournament appearances, but haven't been able to break through and get that tournament win. So, you bring back Josh Hubbard, but what is the overall temperature of the program with a lot of new faces and kind of dealing with the fact that we're getting that 20 wins? We're right there in the SEC, but not really like a legitimate contender to be winning the league or to be making a deep run.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are excited, especially because Josh Hubbard decided to come back after declaring for the NBA draft. He decided to come back, which I don't think really surprised a lot of people because while he's a phenomenal college basketball player, he maybe doesn't project as well into the NBA because of his size and things like that. So him being back is the huge deal. He's one of the most popular people on campus right now. He's from Mississippi, which obviously helps too. But overall, people have been very happy with what Chris Jans has built here, and that's winning at a consistent level because that's something that Mississippi State basketball hasn't really been able to do in a long time. But pretty much all 3 of his seasons have resulted in the same thing, right? They've gone to the tournament, but haven't been able to win a game. They've gone 8-10 in the SEC in all 3 of his seasons. So people are excited, but I think Essel now having that for 3 seasons in a row, a lot of fans are wondering what can the next step be? Can Mississippi State take that next step and maybe contend at the top of the SEC and make a run in March?
Losing some key guys from the program in Cam Matthews and Keyshawn Murphy, and then some of the portal guys who were there for a year: Kugel, Claude Harris, RJ Melendez, if you want to count Clary, but I mean he was barely involved. I mean Hubbard and Jones are your 2 guys back. Do you think there is 2-part question? One, is there another level for Josh Hubbard to reach, whether it's defense, leadership, efficiency? And then Sean Jones, does he scale up from that 19 minutes a game he was playing last year? And how crucial is it to have a guy who understands the way that Jans wants to play in the system?
Mm-hmm. I think for Josh Hubbard, at least, there is another level that he can take defensively. Unfortunately for him, he's always just going to be limited by his size because he's just not very tall and not super lengthy. But he took a pretty big step, I think, leadership-wise last season, and that paid off. He had a little bit of a slow shooting start to the start of conference play, and was kind of asked to do a lot, especially once Kanye Clary got injured, and there was like a month where like Mississippi State was trying to figure it out, what they can do without him. And so Josh Hubbard was kind of asked to do a lot at the start of SEC play. And I think they started figuring out, and he hit a groove kind of late January-ish, and then onto the end of the season where he really was playing at a high level. And for Sean Jones, he kind of profiles similar in a sense to what Mississippi State had in Cameron Matthews as this lengthy, defensive-minded player. He's a little bit smaller than Cam Matthews, so it's maybe more of a wing versus a forward or even a small ball 5. The key for him is, can he take a step in his offensive game? Because he's not a terrific shooter. He doesn't score a ton of points, but he's super athletic. He was probably the best dunker on the team last year and had some pretty highlight reel moments. So if he's able to take a step and be a consistent offensive player, I think there's a chance that he starts and is a really impactful player for Mississippi State. But if not, then he'll probably be coming off the bench and but still be a pretty impactful player and will be in the rotation almost certainly.
Something interesting when you take a look at the analytics for Mississippi State in the Jans tenure. So 9th best defense in the country on KenPom 2023, 22nd 2024, dropped to 46th last year, but it's the best offensive season, 24th compared to 73rd and 176th. I say that, wow, the team still only shot 31% from deep, and it was the only time they were outside the top 20 in offensive rebounding. So was there anything stylistically that last year, that you think was a change from earlier on in Jans' tenure about, the way they played offensively? And do you expect anything to be different this year? I mean, it is about Josh Hubbard. It's about transition opportunities and crashing the offensive glass, right? But is there anything about the approach to offense or something that you kind of took away from last season?
Yeah, so going into last season, they wanted to improve the offense because everyone knows Chris Jans, he's the dentist, the nickname, and because he's always had a grueling defense, and
Mhm.
that was what made Mississippi State successful in his first 2 seasons here. But the offense, what was kind of holding them back, and so going into last season, it was okay. How can we improve the offense while keeping the defense at the same level that it's had been at? And while they were able to improve the offense, it came at the expense of the defense.
Mhm.
So they wanted to improve 3-point shooting. They shot more 3-pointers, I believe, last season than they had previously under Chris Jans, but didn't do it very efficiently. I think some of the transfers that they brought in, weren't, I don't want to call them busts, but some of the guys they had some high hopes for, and it didn't really pan out in terms of getting Josh Hubbard help offensively. It was the big thing. And Kanye Clary was maybe going to be a guy who could have done that for them, who was playing at a really high level at Penn State before he came to Mississippi State. But I think he only played, I don't know the exact number right here, but 6-7 games before, being lost for the season. And he was going to be kind of a point guard guy that can help distribute and command an offense. But they lost him, which I think hurt the team for sure. And so I think that this year you're going to see him go back a little bit to where Chris Jans' teams were in the first 2 seasons here at Mississippi State, where they've kind of gone back to the defense and the rebounding and kind of the grinding play. But also you don't want the offense to take a big step back either. So we'll see how that all pans out.
So alongside Hubbard, the name that jumps out to me is probably the next best scorer on the team is Jaden Epps. Georgetown last year averaged 13 points a game, another smaller guard, a little bigger than Hubbard. But what do you think about Epps fitting alongside Hubbard and just this undersized backcourt together?
Yeah, they could be a lethal combo, I think. Jaden Epps' numbers from Georgetown, especially 2 years ago, were really crazy good. But it seemed like, and I wasn't watching Georgetown a ton 2 years ago, admittedly, but from what I've seen and heard and read, that he was asked to do a lot on that Georgetown team, which is why his numbers were so elevated. And then maybe last season he didn't have to do as much. So that's maybe why his scoring was down a year ago. But still a good player, obviously. So I think it'll be a very good combo. It can be a very good combo. I don't know for sure if it will be, but I think it could be. And if that can help take some of the pressure off of Josh Hubbard, where he doesn't have to do everything, then that could be what brings Mississippi State to that next level in the SEC. And as we sit here in September, we haven't been able to see any practice. So we haven't had any media availabilities in multiple months. So I don't know for sure if Jaden Epps is going to start. I think my gut tells me he will. But at this point today, it's hard to pen him in for sure as a starter, but I think he will.
Another guard coming in, Jabari McGee from UAB, 11 points, 3 assists a game there. Good athlete. Didn't watch a ton of the American, but when I watched UAB alongside Yaxel, he was definitely a key player. Do you think he would be that other guard that starts if it's not Jaden?
Yeah, he definitely could be. He's a 3-point shooter, and we have heard some pretty good things about him, starting from the summer into where we are today, that he's been a guy that Mississippi State coaches have been pretty pleased with coming over here. He's from Mississippi originally. I believe he and Josh Hubbard knew each other in high school. So I think there's some previous connection there that could be, helping foster that relationship here at Mississippi State. And so I think that one of Jaden Epps or Jabari McGee could be starting at the 2 or the 1, whatever you want to say it, at guard. Or maybe they start all 3 of them. I'm not really sure. But Jabari McGee definitely will be an impact player too.
Quincy Ballard, 23 years old, 7-footer, been around the block, Florida State, Wichita State, 10 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks a game on 75% shooting. He's, I assume, the anchor of this defense starting at the 5. How key do you expect him to be? Because he seems kind of like a guy made for Chris Jans.
Exactly, yeah. That was one of the big things that Mississippi State wanted to acquire in the transfer portal, was someone that could be a defensive anchor at the center position. Because Cam Matthews was more of that at the 4 and not really a center. And Chris Jans hasn't really had a center like Quincy Ballard in his time here at Mississippi State. So they're very excited about him. I think he could be a really good player that elevates that or brings that defense, back to what it was earlier in Chris Jans' tenure, where they were one of the best in the SEC. And, he could be kind of like a Rudy Gobert kind of player for him. I don't know if that's maybe shooting too high, but, I think that he's going to be a really impact player. He'll be a starter almost certainly. And, Keyshawn Murphy was a big loss for them. I don't think he's a guy that they wanted to lose. He ends up transferring over to Auburn. But Keyshawn Murphy was a little bit more offensive than a defensive player. So I think that they profile a little bit differently, but Quincy Ballard was a pretty big get for them in the portal.
Another transfer out of Chore. 2 years at Samford, goes to Kansas State, doesn't work out. I've heard, without getting into the weeds, some off-court issues with him, but was super talented, super sought after in the portal last year. Like, this is a dude that his last 3 games at Samford, 28 points in the SoCon semis, 25 in the SoCon title game, and then 23 against Kansas. He's big, he moves really well, he can shoot it from Australia. Interesting player, but like I said, there's a bit of mystery with him just because of his, unreliability last season and just other things. So what are the expectations for Chore? But I mean, he's got all the ability in the world. And I feel like Chris Jans likes to take a chance on some of these guys, maybe giving them a second chance, like with Clary coming last year.
Yeah. Like you said, he's kind of a mystery player. I think in best case scenario, he could be a starter for Mississippi State and be a really good player on the wing for him. But at this point, it's really hard to say, what kind of player he's going to be. Can he be what he was at Samford and bring that over here to Mississippi State? Or, for the guy who left the program last year at Kansas State, how does that impact him? What does that mean for his next season here at Mississippi State? It's kind of hard to say at this point, but he's kind of a mystery player, and I don't want to jump the gun here if you were intending to ask about him, but Amir Ali transfer from Arizona State, I think he kind of falls into that same category too of like a mystery player for different reasons, because he was a pretty, highly recruited player who didn't play a ton though at Arizona State and is transferring here as a wing player. Both of them have the initials AA, so I've kind of like in my head, like they just kind of mix in my head. But I think that both of those guys are kind of like mystery. Like, I'm not really sure exactly what Mississippi State's going to get out of them. I think they'll play, but I can't confidently say what their roles are going to be right now.
The last piece in that transfer class, Brandon Walker, 15 points a game at Montana State, 5 boards, shot 53% from the field, 39% from deep on 1.5 attempts per game. Admittedly was not that tapped into Montana State last year, so don't know much about Brandon Walker, but is the expectation that he is a key player for this team?
I think if he plays, it'll be off the bench. I know he can shoot the ball pretty well, so I'm not sure if he'll be a starter or play a lot of minutes, but I think he could be useful in certain situations, and kind of come off the bench as a 3 or 4 kind of guy.
And then you got this freshman class, 4 stars coming in, King Grace, T. Bartlett, Jamarion Davis-Fleming, and Cameron Paul. Who are these guys? Who's going to factor in this year? And who are you, I guess, highest on?
Yeah, it's one of the best signing classes Mississippi State has had in a long time. So people are very excited about it. I think the guards are the 2 that you could see making an impact the soonest. King Grace, one of them, and then Cameron Paul's and the guy who's we've heard some good things about as they've gotten here. T. Bartlett was not here over the summer. I believe he was finishing up some academic things, or he was playing in the overtime elite league, and I'm not exactly sure how that all works, but he wasn't here in the summer. He's here now. So, because he wasn't here in the summer, maybe he's a little bit behind. I'm not really sure. Jamarion Davis-Fleming, I think he could be the backup center because he's a little bit longer and taller. I think he's taller. I shouldn't say for certain.
He's
but
6'10", listed 6'10".
Okay, so then technically he actually is shorter than T. Bartlett. But T. Bartlett's a little bit thicker of a player, I think, compared to Jamarian Davis Fleming. So maybe he's a backup center, kind of a rim protector guy. It's really interesting mix of wings when you take the transfers and the freshmen. It's really hard to say how some of that's going to sort out, but because this is such a great signing class, you think that some of them are going to be, part of the rotation and things like that. So we'll see how it shakes out.
The one other name that I've heard could factor in here is the Slovenian Serge Makira. It's just very new for me to have to pay attention to who these European guys are coming into college basketball. So like, I have no clue if this guy could be really good or if he's not going to factor at all. But what can you tell me?
I'm the same way, man. I have no idea. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you look at their Euro ball stats and you're like, okay, this is what kind of player he maybe is, but it's so hard to tell because there's not that the rankings mean everything, but there's no rankings of these players, and you don't know how they're going to transition into coming over to America and Mississippi and from Europe. So I'm really have no clue what to expect from him this season. We're just going to have to find out in November when it all starts.
Last thing with the way I started this, 3 straight 20-win seasons, no tournament win, but like you said, consistent winning basketball in Mississippi State. You got a nice recruiting class come in. How do you think Chris Jans and the staff, and I guess the fan base, just feel about how this offseason went? Josh Hubbard wasn't really a threat to go to the league. I don't know if anyone was trying to poach him, or I know he's a Mississippi guy. He probably didn't want to go, but bringing in guys like Epsa Shore, Ballard, McGee, were those seen as wins? Were these strong wins? Were these medium wins? I guess the NIL situation, all of that. How do you think Jans feels about the offseason?
I would say satisfied, but not. It wasn't perfect. I think losing Keyshawn Murphy was the big thing that people are upset about or disappointed in, because he had a breakout season for him last year, was second on the team in scoring, and a guy who's been in the program for a while. He was away from the team for a bit 2 years ago and then came back and, finally started to figure things out last season and was a really good scorer for him. But he ends up transferring to Auburn, who he's from Alabama. And I believe I know he had a pretty high aspiration for Auburn in his high school recruiting process and, wasn't really recruited by him then. And so he ends up going back now to Auburn. Obviously, Auburn's one of the top programs in the country. So that was a really big loss for him. But I think that they did a pretty good job replacing him with some of the transfers they got. I think Quincy Ballard is going to be the big one for him that can bring Mississippi State's defense back to how Chris Jans wants it, and the rebounding too. That was another thing that they kind of struggled with, and just being a more efficient three-point shooting team. So I think fans and everyone are pretty excited about the season, maybe slightly less than last season, because last year was Josh Hubbard's sophomore year. And it was, oh my God, what's this sophomore going to look like? What is the potential of this guy after he had a phenomenal freshman season? And he did have a very good season again as a sophomore. But now it's what kind of talent can they surround him with? And can that lead to a run in March? It's weird because, you get judged so much about March Madness, and in reality, it was only one game, and they lose that game by 3 points to Baylor. And Claudell Harris had a chance to tie the game in the last second, but his three-pointer didn't go in. And if that three-pointer goes in, you go to overtime, and Mississippi State has the momentum, and who knows where the game could have gone from there. But, his shot at the buzzer doesn't go in, and the season ends. So, and it ends in the same spot that it has, the last 3 seasons. So, fans are excited, but we'll see how it can go, it can elevate to being one of the top teams in the SEC.
And I mean, we've been here for 20 minutes, and we feel like we haven't talked that much about Josh Hubbard. To be very clear, this is one of the best guards in the country, right? Just in terms of scoring, 19 a game. He's got the ultimate green light and the trust from Jans. He'll be getting probably 9 threes up a game. He's just so fun to watch, the way he elevates to shoot, and the way that at his size, the way he's able to create shots for himself. Like, he is so fun to watch, and you always have a chance with a guy like that. And it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the roster comes together. But one thing for sure, you know what you're going to get from Chris Jans, the consistency, and with a down defense, you're still top 50 nationally. Like, with the defense leveling up a bit and with Hubbard running the point, like, there's a certain floor, I think, that comes with that. So I'm excited to see, the way the other pieces come around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Josh is an electric player. He's a ton of fun to watch. I think if Mississippi State does take that next step and can compete at the top of the SEC, then fans around the country will really start to take notice in him if they haven't already for some reason. But yeah, he's a ton of fun to watch. I think kind of like that perfect mold of like a spectacular college basketball player that isn't going to be a one and done. And so you get him for multiple years. And, the fact that he's from Mississippi, he's from the Madison, which is the outside of Jackson, the suburbs of Jackson. So that also just makes him super popular and well-liked here. So he's probably one of the more popular athletes on campus. And once the season starts, they'll be packing the hump to watch him play.
There you have it. That's Mississippi State. That's the breakdown. Sam, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.